Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at Silicon Slopes. Looks like we've got some snowy weather, so the slopes will be snowy for sure. But thank you so much. We really want to first start off by thanking Silicon Slopes for hosting this event. Such a fantastic partner with us and here at SoftServe, and we've been with them since the beginning and just really appreciate that partnership. Also want to thank the companies that work with us today and our partners as well. Just so great to work with you and to be able to do so many great things with our organizations. So with that, we'll get started. All right, thanks. That slide's coming up. We're really fortunate to have with us Matt McBride. He is with SoftServe, our Vice President and Global Head of Digital Strategy and Design, and world-renowned. He speaks all over the place, all over the world to large groups, and we're just so lucky to have him here with us today and to talk about this, navigating the digital strategy, and especially this cone of uncertainty, uncovering that. So it's going to be a fun event, and we're really grateful that you're here with us. So the thing we wanted to do now is to introduce a little bit about SoftServe. If you're not familiar with this, we're really advisors and providers of technology solutions, and work with a number of companies all around the world. Matt, why don't you give a little intro to yourself and where you fit into this area?
Sure. Thanks, Corey. So I'm Matt McBride. As Corey said, I run our global digital strategy and experience design practice. What that really means is that, as SoftServe, as an advisor and a provider, we're really end to end. So everything from digital strategy all the way to implementation and delivery. So really, my teams focus on the upfront advisory piece around digital strategy and really trying to get a better understanding of how we can compete in terms of, executing on business strategy and everything really in between, all the way through ideation and designing solutions and into delivery. So I'm excited to be here today to talk about digital strategy as part of that.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much. Now, we have a great event for you today, and we're also going to be providing, if you go to the next slide, the digital maturity assessment that was mentioned in the invitation to the event. And this assessment will help you in a number of ways, but to get a deeper analysis of the various dimensions of your business as it relates to your overall digital maturity as an organization. So we're going to be providing a code. So if you go to this link here, you'll see that you need a code. So stick with us, and we'll be able to do that. So I think the housekeeping's finished. Let's get on to what is a digital strategy. So first, let's get a level set. Digital strategy means a lot of different things to different people. So Matt, how do you define that digital strategy?
Yeah, and that's true. It does mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. The way that we talk about digital strategy is, it's really a convergence of a few different elements that we'll dive deeper into throughout the presentation. And it means a lot of things. It could be frameworks. It could be, how you execute and add business value through digital means. But at the end of the day, what we see that's common across most of the companies we work with, we're trying to answer a single question, which is, how should we be competing in an increasingly digital world? So how do we leverage technology? How do we leverage digital to be part of our business strategy so that we're actually delivering value? And that could be in many different ways. And I think we'll talk about a lot of those as we go through the rest of the talk today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of us here working in technology industry, or at least some piece of technical industry, and we're aware of the impact digital has on our lives. But maybe we can look at some of the research and understand the global impact that digital is having.
Yeah, and I think it's beneficial to just to understand really more around the context of the size of today's digital economy. And I know most of the people here are probably based in the US, so there's a market here. But if we think about the global economy, um, there's some research that can help us really understand where we are, where we're going, and how we all fit into that. But the research says that by 2022, 60% of the global economy is going to be digital. So that includes many different types of organizations. So some are digital natives, that the companies that were born digital, that are based on digital. But it also includes all types of organizations, whether they're product or service types of companies or organizations, and those that are transforming to be more digital. So I think the 60% is really it encompasses many types of companies that are in different parts of their digital transformation journey, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah.
And with that said, it's only, 50% looks like a lot. That's half of Earth. But if you're talking about the world population, I look at that as 50% of the population is not digital yet. They're not part of the digital economy. So that really tells you how much potential there is. And even with digital natives, even with social media, everything that we have, that's only 50% of the world population participating in that. And it seems like everyone is digital these days, but it's only half of the world. So I think as we move forward, everyone's looking to try to understand how we access that other and unlock the other 50%, whether that's some of that's through challenges with infrastructure and and depending on where they are geographically, but a lot of that is about how we start to evolve services to be more digital, or products to be more digital, to access these individuals. And then if we just think about the economy overall, digital is growing almost more than 4 times faster than the rest of the economy. So the writing's on the wall, as they say, but I think we all know where we're heading, and those numbers are pretty compelling. That tells us that where we're going, it tells us who we're affecting, it tells us how fast we're getting there. But the really concerning number is that only 16% of digital transformation projects or activities that are happening within organizations, success rate is very, very low. So it's only 16%. And that means that, if you do the inverse of that number, that's a failure rate. So as we're moving towards this 60%, how do we actually help increase the likelihood of success? And I think digital strategy is a big part of that, along with many other things, aligning with business strategy and some of the other elements that we'll talk about today. And then what's probably on a lot of people's minds right now, just because of the point in time that, within where we are right now in the world, is that we're accelerating at an unprecedented pace. So we were already accelerating quickly, but this is 2020, if you're looking at this from the future. And, there was a pandemic. There still is a pandemic at this point, and it's accelerated all types of transformation, whether that's been in healthcare and in practice, or, with all types of companies going remote, accelerating the remote workplace and the future of the workplace. And really, in many companies that knew that they needed to transform, have been sort of forced to accelerate the pace at which they were planning to transform. So that's another factor that we need to look at. So, what's the takeaway from that data? I think, what can we do about it, I guess, is the better question. The biggest issue is the success rate. So if there's going to be 60% of the global economy that is digital by 2022, that's not far from now. That's not a long time. And how do we actually increase that 16%? And I guess the best way to think about that is trying to understand, why is there such a high failure rate right now?
Yeah. No, absolutely, Matt. Those are a lot of really interesting numbers. So what are the challenges that cause such a low success rate?
Yeah, and I think the challenges are numerous and they're plentiful, but what we see actually aligns with models that exist. So there's the VUCA model that really, it talks about volatility and urgency and complexity and ambiguity. If we actually think about what those words mean, and not to get philosophical or academic here, but I think there's an urgency to change. So everyone understands, especially, in our current circumstances, people have been forced to change. So there's an urgency, but there's also the complexity of change. And that has more to do with what's happening within an organization. How do you unravel that complexity?
Yeah.
And then there's the volatility of the market. These are things that we can't control. So markets change, people's attitudes change, technology changes, change. And so as that's happening, these are, as I said, they're beyond our control. So how do we actually prepare ourselves for that volatility? And then, of course, is ambiguity, or better known as uncertainty.
Right.
And really, this is the one that's a lot of organizations we talk to, they don't know what to change. They don't know what needs to change. They know that change is urgent. They know it's complex. They know that they can't control outside forces. Sometimes they can't control inside forces, but they don't know how to resolve that into a plan where they know exactly what needs to change. And that's entirely ambiguous to many people. And I think that's a lot of what we want to talk today is how we actually bring clarity to that ambiguity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we take a minute right here and take a minute to reflect on your organization and your position and some of the things you do, and just ask this question. So what is the number one challenge for you in your organization? Is it volatility? Is it urgency? Is it complexity, ambiguity, or is it something else? As you're kind of thinking through that, I'll ask Matt maybe here what he sees the most often as he works with organizations around the world, some of the things that are the number one challenge for them.
Yeah, and I think it's always a beneficial exercise to have some self-reflection and
be reflective, yeah,
and try to understand where you are and gauge yourself. But we see all of these. But I think most organizations understand the competitive nature of their business and the volatility that exists. Most companies, not all, but most that we talk to now, change and transformation is the first thing that's at the top of the list. So they understand the urgency. And many, some organizations are young and they're more agile. Some are, you've been doing the same thing the same way for 25 plus years. That introduces a level of complexity. So there are organizations that understand that complexity is a big challenge for them also. But the one that I really see across all types of organizations is ambiguity. It's because they know all these other things. They know it's volatile. They know it's urgent. They know it's complex. They just don't know what needs to change. And I think that's the one where sometimes it's helpful to have an outside view, someone to come in from externally to be able to look at your organization objectively and understand, help you understand what needs to change or help you see what you don't see. But that's the one that sticks out to me more than others is ambiguity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, we know the world's becoming more digital. We want to make sure we compete in that digital world the best way we possibly can. And, but I think the digital strategy is a kind of a black box for a lot of people. And because it's about navigating that uncertainty and coming up with a plan on how to move forward and add value and, those sorts of things. So, the next slide here says, what about this cone of uncertainty, right? So what can you tell us about the cone of uncertainty and how we might be able to navigate that and then also leverage a framework that we can use to sustain this?
Yeah, so we use the concept of a cone of uncertainty in many cases where we're trying to uncover problems or try to bring clarity, in any type of situation. But within this context, I think that it's really about trying to go from, as I say, going from A to V. And what that means really is if you start with ambiguity and it's a challenge for you and your organization, how can you really leverage that as an opportunity to align an organization in order to drive value? And that's business value. So attaching that to business metrics or aligning that with your business strategy or at least getting you prepared to innovate. And so if you look at this model, this is, I mean, it's not the prettiest cone in the world, but it's a cone. Um, but it's really about these three streams. So there's people, there's processes, and there's technology. And on the far left side, we see it's an ambiguous situation. There's a lot of high uncertainty, and there's misalignment between the people that are within the organization, the processes that they're using to do whatever they do, and the technology that enables that. And if you look on the far right side, the other side, we see the ability to deliver value. And what's the difference is that we have total alignment between people, processes, and technology. So they're not working against each other. They're not siloed. They're aligned, and they're aligned towards a goal, and they're aligned towards a way to deliver value. So if you look at the bottom of this graph here, you see this could be defined as a process, as a digital strategy framework. It doesn't mean it's the right one for everyone. It means it is a framework. And it starts with framing a problem and framing the context of the organization. So if we begin there with research and outlining what a strategy could be, we go through a few different stages from defining an overall vision and planning out a program and integrating change management as a key player within this process, and then defining metrics and aligning as an organization on what success looks like, and eventually having a single aligned vision of what needs to be accomplished to move forward and add value. And so, that doesn't mean this is the right framework for everyone. It's a framework that can work for many people. It can be customized, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on how to do that. But I think really the point is that if you look at this as a period of time, what digital strategy is doing, it's closing the gap between people, processes, and technology. So the more refined and the more purposeful your digital strategy is, the tighter that gap becomes. And eventually it closes, and you have alignment within your organization to actually drive value, or at least be prepared as an organization to be structured and aligned in a way where everyone is marching towards the same metrics, the same business goals, and in a quantifiable way to add value.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the cone of uncertainty shows that digital strategy is necessary, right, to align people, processes, and technology. But I think a lot of people as well, if you think about it, struggle with what a good digital strategy even looks like. So what can you tell us about some of the elements of a good digital strategy?
Yeah, and that's, it's a great question. And
Yeah.
on this slide, we show a version of a strategy. But if we're just thinking about in general, best practices, the elements that we see where people are successful, there are several elements, but the first one is really, the best way I can say this is to make it personal. But when I say personal, I mean about the business. So you need to clearly define a strategy that reflects your own context. So many people are trying to apply methodologies that they see or they read about, best practices, or something they watched on YouTube, or something they read in the Harvard Business Review. I don't know, but I think what people really need to do is customize for themselves.
Right.
And so and that depends on what type of company you are, when you started, where are you on your journey, and we'll talk about some of those things. But as an example, if I'm not a digital native, so if my company was not born digital,
Mhm.
so let's say that I'm a print shop, or I'm actually printing a newspaper. Maybe I'm a newspaper. One aspect of digital strategy, you could say, well, we need a digital strategy, and what it means for us is that it's a way to deliver on the business strategy in a digital way. So maybe we change our business model to be digitally focused and no longer leverage, an analog model. Great. That's a way to change, and that's a way to leverage digital to do that, and we can plan around that. If I'm a digital native and my company was born digital, then my digital strategy is my business strategy. And so you kind of have to change the perspective on this based on where you are and where you came from, to be able to understand how you can actually really perform on the business strategy. Because sometimes it is the business strategy. The digital strategy is the business strategy. So it's something to consider. So that's the first element. I think moving into the second element, this one's a little bit trickier because I think there's some. It's a language problem. Let's frame it as a language problem. So, just identifying your position in the digital transformation journey. I think that some people struggle, and there's language that's misused within the industry and within organizations. And academically, I think there are there's 3 different stages of digital maturity that we talk about. And it's not a semantic exercise. And I know that these words seem similar and people can say, well, it's just words. Like, come on, we're either doing it or we're not. Well, that's not actually true. So these words mean something, at least in the way that we use them. And it's tied to the business context. So if you're in this first sort of infantile stage of digitization, all that really means is that you're converting analog to digital. So if you are a healthcare company and you are changing, paper patient records into digital records, into data points, that's digitization. If you're translating analog to digital, that's all that is. But if you find a way to adapt that and leverage that as part of your business model, and change processes and begin really to leverage data in a way that changes the way that you do business, then you're sort of moving into the digitalization of your business. So not digitizing records, but digitalizing your business. And then eventually, if you are going through a full-scale transformation, then you're changing an analog business model into a digital business model. You're leveraging technology across all the elements we've talked about, from people, process, and technology. There's integration between them, and it diffuses across the organization. And that requires, it doesn't happen overnight, obviously. It requires sometimes external digital advisory and technical advisory. That means that, we're not doing technology for the sake of technology. We've actually have a plan of how to integrate this and optimize processes and automate things in a way that drives business value. But not just, based on something that we've been opportunistic about, but as a philosophy and a culture of our company. So it is a little bit academic, I know, but it is a good way to actually think about how mature your organization is. Are we just now, did we just get emailed last week, or are we fully all in on digital as an organization? So, I think you can also reflect in this way.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a minute to actually do some more self-reflection, which I agree with. I think it makes a lot of sense to just think about which stage best describes the state of your digital journey. Are you at that digitization, right, where you're just converting assets to, data to digital? Are you actually in the digitalization where you're adapting those processes within your business model? Or is it transformation where the business value creation via those digital system and diffusion, that you're creating the value and that's how your value comes? And as I think about U-Science, the company I was just at, that we started with organizations that had a Scantron. We would take the Scantron and then we'd make that digital. The data was now digital. Now we start with digital, and now it's transforming the business into more business value. So that's their path through that process. So think about your own. Where are you at right now, and what are some of the things you're doing? Matt, what do you see across organizations? Where do you think they fall?
Yeah, I think, as I said in the beginning, it's a language problem, and a lot of people they'll say, "Oh, we need transformation. We've got to turn our analog things into digital things." Well, that's not transformation. At a micro level, I guess it's transformation, but it's really just digitization. And so I think there's an education process that sometimes needs to happen, especially with people that have a vision and they're trying to go get budgets. They have to be able to explain this and explain that, there are different levels and there's different efforts and different requirements to actually achieve different types of business outcomes. But I think where I see most people, with our clients, it's somewhere between number two and number three.
Right.
And so a lot of people are, I can't tell you how many clients we talk to where they say we have all this data, but we don't need to know what to do with it.
Right.
And that's what I would say is number two. You're trying to figure out, you already have everything. You have a lot of digital stuff, but what do you do with it? How do you actually create business value out of it? And, and that's one of the areas where we go and help people all the time. But sometimes, there's large scale transformation where people realize we haven't changed anything in 25 years.
Yeah.
And we see if we don't change now, we won't exist anymore. And that's a scary thought. And I'm not trying to induce fear here, but I do think that in those cases, it's about how do we enable people with digital? How do we, make a digital a part of their job? To make their jobs easier.
Right.
And that's much, it's a human centered approach that needs to happen in that world. But I think that's where most companies are going. But if you're a digital native, then if you're already there, but if you're not, then you're trying to get there, and transformation's the way to do it, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are organizations even that started digital native may have some opportunities to optimize that and see more value. And that process, as we think about it, there is a right process and a good process to go through, and which brings us to number three, right? Element three, which is mapping the digital ecosystem. So maybe first we need to define what a digital ecosystem is. What does that contain for the purposes of a digital strategy?
Yeah, and as a designer, I love mapping things, and so this is where I come from, and this is what a visual way to represent how are you going to drive value and see all the missing pieces, and understand how everything works together. And on one hand, there is the business ecosystem, and it's broader, and it encompasses many things beyond. If we think about it as people, process, and technology, just in the area of people, that's not just your people that are working for you. That's also the public. It's also, it could be suppliers, vendors, partners, users, obviously, or customers. But really, maybe you're contracting people. There are a lot of different humans that you could talk about and different ways that they interact with your business. Processes, that depends on where you are, what kind of company you are, what kind of business you run. But everyone has processes, and obviously they're tied to many of the people. And if the people don't have the right processes, there's a failure point there. If there are people if you have the right processes and the wrong people, well, you have a failure point there. And then there's technology. We all know technologies, and it's constantly changing. But all of these together should be aligned with the core of your business. And when you map all these pieces out, you can start to see there are a lot of dependencies. And if you have a failure point with technology, like your technology can't support the processes, well, there you go. If your processes are, redundant and you can optimize those, that's probably something you should do. If you have the right people, but they're not right for the process, or maybe you need to change, some job descriptions and change people to maybe you can automate some processes and let people add more value to the business in another area. So starting with this mapping, I think, is a really important way to give you a high level view of, it's just clarity. It's what is there. And we do this all the time. It's one of the first exercises that we'll do when we talk to our customers, because shockingly to me, most organizations have never done this ever. And and maybe that's me as a person who does this for a living, saying, well, that's strange to me. But I think once you do it and you see the value of it, it's something that you always go back to, and you say, well, let's map this out. Look at this ecosystem, because it's a system. Like, your business is a system at the end of the day. All these things have to work together. And that's kind of what the digital strategy is trying to orchestrate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right on there.
So, with having said that, though, things change, like especially with technology, and especially with the complexity within organizations. And I think it's some people might say, well, if I said one element is make it agile, they might say, of course we should make it agile. And I would say, yes, you're right. But I think what often happens is that people attach the concept of agile to the delivery of technology, and much more around execution and less around having a flexible strategy that can adapt and be adaptable to change. And I think the two players, as I talked about earlier with this model, if you think about the volatility of markets, so things like, especially with as much change that's happening at the paces and the pace at which it's happening, demographics, technology, the predictability of business, all these things they're a little bit unpredictable right now. And then the complexity. So, if when you go digital, your users might change. They all types of things might change. The way that you deliver a service or a product might change. So constituents, it's all those people that exist within that ecosystem. But there's also a lot of things that happen in the world right now around large movements to digital services, and deverticalizing businesses so that you have like horizontal digital capabilities. There's a lot that can be, in reality, we can be as complex as we want. And we can't really control the volatility as much, but we can a little bit control the complexity. But either way, what we're really trying to say is that you need to be flexible with your strategy, continue to iterate on it. And it's not a thing that you create and then waterfall it the rest of your, business life. It needs to be revisited. It needs to be continuously customized and improved. And it needs to consider all these different types of variables.
It's not on your 3-year plan. That's what you're saying.
I'm just saying, update your 3-year plan.
Update it. Yeah.
And that brings me to change management. So this one is near and dear to my heart as a sort of a human-centered practitioner in whatever I'm doing, whether it's strategy or design or anything else. I think that a lot of organizations fail to see the opportunity that exists with change management. We deal so much with technology, we deal so much with execution and delivery excellence and code quality, and that's all great. And we can deliver something that should be perfect. It should be a perfect fit for an audience. It can be perfectly coded. It can be a perfect model. But if people don't use it, it's a complete failure. And that's not project management. That's change management. It's the human side of change. It's not the roadmaps and am I on budget and am I on time? It's how do I get my users to change the way that they do their jobs and adopt these tools or whatever. Or it's how do I get my users who have never used a digital way of doing this before to start doing this in a digital way. And that's not, you can design a great product that does that, but you've also got to figure out how to change behavior. And and you can do that. You can try to do that by fishing, which is, we have the best bait and it's out there and just wait for people to bite, but they're probably never going to come. So I think change management is much more about, helping people along that journey. And especially if you're dealing with something internally, even your internal, constituents for your business. I love this quote that, it says, if you want to make enemies, try to change something. And it's true. I could think of a very specific example where I was at a large enterprise and they rolled out a brand new email platform and everyone wanted it, but it was invite only and you couldn't have it. And so everyone was very angry that they couldn't have it. And then eventually they rolled it out and forced adoption to everyone, and everyone hated it. And suddenly you had, an organization of several 100,000 people trying to use a tool that no one enjoyed using because there was zero change management that went along with it. There's nothing about, why should I change? What's in it for me as a user of a thing or as an employee of your business? What's in it for me? And I think we as an industry do a poor job of helping users and humans along that journey so that they can understand why they need to change. And sometimes, there's a lot of people say that humans have an aversion to change, which I kind of agree with, but in reality, it's, people will change if they have a reason to. So I think the failure is really on the people who are, you know, creating the change without showing them the value of what it is. And so, you know, I think it's a piece that's often missed out in delivery of software in general. And so some organizations don't have it at all. Some people will bring in a third party to help users along and, help with some change management. But, if you look, especially in Europe, I see them as much more progressive. And, there are people, they're building programs that are built around change, that are built into the delivery of solutions. And I think that's a big opportunity that we all have to help users along.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a change that's happening there. And it does tend to get overlooked. We think that, look, if we design things well, we deliver them with excellence, then everything will be adopted and it'll be perfect, right? But we all know that's not how the story ends. So let's just take another moment of reflection about your situation, your company, your products, your implementation of your products with your organizations, and think about what statement best describes your business, right? Is change management, is it not part of that digital transformation or digitization efforts, right? Change management, it's sort of an afterthought, right? Or do you bring in experts to guide you, on change management when you feel like it's needed? Or is change management an ongoing program parallel to that, your digital transformation program? And you have a dedicated team for that. So think about where you're at. And I think maybe it's different based on a project or based on certain things that you're doing. And maybe certain parts of your organization are better at identifying this need for change management and when they do. But certainly it's something we see. And as you mentioned, some of your companies in Europe, have kind of caught on to this as they take a look at it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think that because we have a global view, our clients are all over the world. And so we also see, even at the pace of change, Europe has sort of been a little bit ahead, at least from what I've seen in transformation. But also just the adoption of change management as a practice, as something it's sort of become expected. It's something that everyone should have built into any type of project you're doing. Because you think about it, I mean, if you spend $2 million or $2 on building something or redesigning a solution or creating something that's new, but you have zero adoption, then you have an ROI problem. I mean, so I mean, it's very directly tied, and there's research that shows, poor change management delivers lower ROI as you release, whatever your new solution is.
Well, absolutely.
Change management is higher ROI. It's just research shows that.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. I think about all the different companies that are part of Silicon Slopes, and we provide so many fantastic services and solutions across the board. This is a great item to reflect on, to see how well is change management implemented into those solutions that this community is providing to the world. Because literally, we touch every corner of the world here with Silicon Slopes. So yeah, fantastic thoughts. So, moving to our next thought here is, that gives us a good idea of how to build a fit for purpose digital strategy. We've also talked about assessing our current maturity of an organization. And we mentioned that online assessment is coming at the end of this webinar. So please hang on, right? We'll go much deeper into assessing your organization and your digital readiness as an organization. But do we have some kind of a checklist that the C-suite, all right, maybe your CEO or COO or CTO or any of the management type leaders in the organization can use as sort of a litmus test to get a high level understanding of what they're doing well what they might be missing, and maybe what they don't know about at all that they should be tracking. Is there this checklist?
Yeah, and I think that, at this point, I'm a broken record about people, processes, and technology, but we do
Right.
have a tool set that exists, and you could use this to go ask for budget, or you could use this, as a way to help influence other people within an organization, or really just a way to assess your team. But we use these, I call these six lenses, but we sort of break them down based on processes and people and technology in this order, in this instance. But it's if we start with processes, there's just some simple questions you can ask, and this isn't, it's not meant to make you feel bad about your organization, or it's not to say that anything is good or bad. Really, it's meant to give you, a way to understand either we're working on something, or it's a gap that we haven't thought about, or we need help here, or we're actually way ahead. We're doing all of this stuff. So if you think just from the beginning, I mean, the simple questions to ask is, do I have a digital strategy? Um, but even if you don't, you can continue to go through this and understand a lot about where you are. But if you do, one question to ask is, well, have you tested its ability to deliver on transformation? So that really means, have you set metrics? Do you know that if you execute this, it's going to deliver on that value that's attached to your business strategy? And then continuing down, I think I just talked about change, but do you have a change strategy? Even if you can't do change management, or if you don't have the competency in house, or if you have a low competency, even if you need someone from third party to come help you, do you at least include that as part of your strategy? And I think even having it there and justifying it and showing the value of it, or at least trying to articulate the value of it, gives you a leg up, and a better likelihood of success. And then, are all these things aligned with business strategy? So, you know, everything from digital change, all of these things, you need to attach them to the business strategy in some way so that you're executing and showing value. So that's the A to V thing that I talked about. And then culture, does your culture support change? If not, again, change management could be a solution there. But really, have you enabled your teams with the right processes around agile and other methodologies, to be able to iterate on solutions and ideas, whether that's through integrating something like design thinking as a practice with rapid prototyping, or a larger model, like the SAFe model, a scaled agile framework for the enterprise that includes design thinking as part of its delivery mechanism. But in general, I think it's important to educate teams on modern digital practices so that they have the right, at least the right tools that they can leverage in terms of processes to actually execute.
Mhm.
And then we talk about people real quick. How are you talking to your people? And I think there's no excuse really for this to not do this, because most businesses, people should be at the core, and the talent is what actually accelerates the execution and drives the ecosystem. So do you have a plan, and a communication strategy, an engagement plan? How do you engage with employees? Like I said earlier, are you using something like design thinking and and leveraging co-creation so that they take ownership of ideas, so that when they become real, there's a higher likelihood of adoption of things? Or do you involve users as part of your plan to roll out new features so that they feel like they're part of the creation of a product or service? And then if you realize that you need new processes or services or products or whatever, you can also do a talent gap analysis. You may not have the right people. You may just be missing some people. You may be able to automate some processes and allow people to free up their time from doing data entry to go doing data analysis, or whatever the case may be. And then I think it's a big one is driving horizontal digital capabilities. So if you only put all your strongest people with digital capabilities in one group, you're siloing that from the rest of the organization. So I think it's important to build those horizontally across the entire organization, whether that's through some sort of change network, or a digital guild of some sort that you can try to brand throughout your organization. I think that's also a good way to help infuse the entire organization with these capabilities. And then finally, just optimizing your workforce. So that could be through tools and automation, but it could also be optimizing the actual people. So making sure the right people are in the right place at the right time with the right tools, doing the right thing, essentially. And then finally, is the technology. And this is the part where most people are okay because they're starting with technology. And it's really the other areas are where we're mostly deficient. But I think it's because we, in many cases, have the wrong mindset that technology is the answer. And the reality, technology should be the enabler, of whatever the solution is. So if you think of, you know, do you have the right technology that enables the right processes, that enables the right people to do the right thing at the right time, as I said? So that could be through, sustainable innovation practices. So, are we creating new the new right technologies? Are we leveraging technology to differentiate our services and to fight off threats of disruptors? Um, and then how are we actually coming up with any of this stuff? Are we researching new technologies? Are we just waiting for someone to publish a report that says we should be using a different technology? And then if you get more specific around things like data and being enabled with data, having a comprehensive data strategy, and really, we include this here. Do you know what you don't know? We have it here at technology, but it could really be across the entire board. Do you know what you don't know? But with data specifically, I mentioned this earlier. We have a lot of customers that have a ton of data. They've been collecting data for years. They just don't know what to do with it. They don't know what's in there. They don't know what's going to happen if they, you know, if they do anything with it. And I think one of our strengths as an organization with our data science team and our AI and ML teams is understanding what's in that data and how to leverage that data and turn that into leverage it as part of a business model to actually drive value. Sometimes create new revenue streams. And then, and that's actually at the bottom. That's what I mean by the economic value of your data. That could be, it could be direct revenue and somehow you monetize, or it could just be, invaluable insights that you have that enable you to unlock so much potential within your business. And security and trust is obviously important. So I won't harp on that. But if you're not doing that, you're not going to do anything else well either. So that's sort of encompasses technology. So really, as I said from the beginning, aligning these three, this is just a way to quickly run through and just think about your organization and say, yeah, I think we're up here, or oh, we're like way down here, and we got to think about some things. But it's not meant to be a solution. It's just a way to think about your organization. And we have the online assessment that we'll give you access to soon that goes a little bit deeper into these areas and gets more specific with questions. And it'll give you like a little bit of a deeper reflection. But I think even this, you can think about these things every day as just a way to guide you, in what you're trying to achieve as a business.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, man. These questions cause a lot of reflection, and you can go deep with any of them. And I'm not sure if we've teased the assessment enough yet. But let's get some concluding thoughts here. So we've talked about the state of digital. We've talked about the importance of a digital strategy framework to guide us through uncertainty, change. And we talked about the checklist, right? It's a good idea to know what we don't know. I think that's all. What other key messages can people take away, before they go into that deep dive assessment? What do you think?
Yeah. So, I can wrap it up with, at this point, people probably know what the things that I think are important, but, from the beginning, we said the goal is to get from A to V. So how do you get from ambiguity to value? So that is essentially, how do I reduce uncertainty and deliver metrics that are attached to my business strategy by leveraging digital to align people, processes, and technology.
Yeah.
So get to A from V. How do you do that? You define a framework to fit your business. So don't apply something out of the box just to do it. Make it fit your business. Make it, fit for purpose. So what are you actually trying to execute? One way to do that is identify your position in the journey. So where are you? Are you in the beginning, just digitizing? Are you ready for full scale transformation? How do you know that? Well, how about let's map your digital ecosystem.
Right.
So let's get an understanding of what players are in play. What are the constituents, from the touch points with the people all the way to the technologies and the processes in between. And then once you're ready to formulate the strategy, make sure that it's flexible. So, you need to be comfortable with change, and you need the agility to change. So make sure that it's agile in whatever format it is. So all that means is, let's revisit it in 2 weeks, make sure it's still the right thing. And if it is, great, let's continue that for the next 2 weeks. But leverage iteration, because I think that continuous improvement doesn't just apply to execution, it also applies to strategy. And don't forget about the humans. So change management. How do we help people through the process of change? Not project management, change management. So differentiate that within your organization. If people don't understand it, help them understand it. Understand that there is an ROI to change management. We can make all the things great, but if no one uses them, then we're all fired. And then finally, alignment between people, processes, and technology. So as I said at the beginning, how do we get from A to V? We align these three. So if you look over on the right side at this, very simple illustration, if we align those three, what's in the middle? Finally, we can innovate. We can drive innovation. We have the right processes, the right people, the right technology. Let's innovate. Let's make better products, better services, better business models. Let's drive more value. So that's what digital strategy is to us. It's how we actually formulate that, the plan to execute on that stuff. It's not the result. It's the way in which we do it. And yeah, if you take away anything, if I'm ranking these in importance, by the way, this is not a stack rank. So number 1 and number 7 are obviously the ones that I've talked about the most. But please don't forget about change management. I beg you all.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, and thank you for being with us today here at Silicon Slopes. We're just so lucky in this area to have you, and SoftServe so lucky as well to have you. So thanks to our attendees. Here's the code that we've been talking about. I hope this gives you some insight into how we think about digital strategy and how we go about guiding our customers through changes, in various scales. You have a week to complete this digital maturity assessment. For that code will be available for weeks. So please share it around to your organization. If you think that people or teams could benefit, get them this link, get them the code, and that'd be fantastic. You'll also have an opportunity at the end of that to shoot us an email. My email's there, corey@softserveinc.com. Love to hear from you if you have any follow-up questions or you'd like us to help take a look at your organization, but you'll have a chance at the end of that as well. Mostly we want to thank Silicon Slopes. Thanks for the opportunity to have this platform and to be able to share this expertise with the group. For those of you in the future that may be watching this not today, hopefully you're not wearing a mask and there's no pandemic, right? But if the code does not work, please contact me at that email address and we'll get you a code so you can walk through the assessment as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Matt, so much. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Silicon Slopes.